First up in this animation spotlight is Transformers Season 2, Volume 2. For those of you keeping score, this is the original and best Transformers cartoon, and it's been re-released by Shout Factory in a new series of shiny boxed DVD sets. Now, these original series were released once before by Rhino, who I believe is now defunct, and Shout Factory has taken over the reins of the Transformers cartoon franchise and has started to re-release them in these nice box sets. So, of course, fans are very happy about that. Now, you might be asking yourself, why should I go purchase these if I already have the Rhino box sets? Well, the fact of the matter is that Shout Factory has done a really nice job with these. They've kind of remastered the episodes, fixed a lot of the color and sound issues the previous releases had, and made sure that all the episodes are in the right order. So you're getting a much more kind of complete view of the series. If you already have the Rhino releases and you don't care about that kind of thing, then there's really no reason to pick these up. But if you're a true Transformers fan, I think you're probably going to want to have the best version available of the original animated series, and these Shout Factory box sets are definitely that. This volume includes the last 21 episodes of Season 2, which is, of course, a lot of fun. You get the Insecticons, and you get the Dinobots, and you get Jetfire, and all kinds of great animated Transformers characters that we all grew up knowing and loving. In addition to all the normal characters such as Optimus Prime and Bumblebee and Megatron and Starscream. It really is kind of a classic slice of my childhood, as I'm sure it is for many of you out there. Now, the Shout Factory releases haven't been overwhelmingly great in terms of extra features, but they do give you some new stuff which has not been previously available. In this volume, you get the Combiner, Forming the Transformers animated series featurette, which is kind of a look at the making of this section of the series. You also get some rare PSAs, which are always a lot of fun, kind of the Transformers starring in the animated vignettes telling kids what not to do to stay healthy, and some archival Hasbro toy commercials, which are really great fun because if you're like me, these will transport you back to the 1980s in a heartbeat. And finally, you get some concept art, which is, of course, always cool for something as neat, visually speaking, as the Transformers is. So, without a doubt, if you're a Transformers fan, Transformers Season 2, Volume 2 comes highly recommended. Next up, we have Super Friends, the DC Comics Classic Collection, Season 1, Volume 1. I'm a pretty big fan of the Super Friends franchise. This is the William Hanna and Joseph Barbera era of the Super Friends. So what you get are 8 episodes that include your typical DC superheroes, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman and Robin, and Aquaman. But this is the version that also includes Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog. Now, if you're like me and you grew up watching the Super Friends, Wendy and Marvin were always kind of the redheaded stepchildren to Jan and Zana, whichever they are, the Wonder Twins. I believe the Wonder Twins actually came later in the run, but they were certainly much more interesting than Marvin and Wendy were. I always found those characters kind of annoying, even as a kid. And I don't think as a kid you should find cartoon characters that annoying. So that kind of tells you something about those two characters. Still, these episodes are a lot of fun. You do get 8 episodes, and this is a Volume 1 set, which leads me to wonder why they couldn't just make an entire Season 1 set with 16 or 22 or however many episodes there were in the first season. But I'm sure DC and Warner are just trying to make as much money as they can, so I'll have to let that one slide for now, although I'm not overwhelmingly thrilled about it. You only get 1 extra feature this time around, and usually DC really steps up to the plate in terms of their extra features, giving us a good solid 40-minute documentary or so on the origins of the characters involved. Unfortunately, this time all we get is a Super Friends trivia challenge, which is only minorly exciting, and I think even then only to diehard Super Friends fans. So this is a fun release, but I think that Warner Brothers and DC could have done a better job with it in terms of the episodes that you get and the extra features included. Next up, also from Warner Brothers, we have You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, the 1985 animated special that was based on the award-winning Broadway musical. Now, this is the 1980s Charlie Brown special, so it's not quite the heyday of the greatest of the Charlie Brown specials from the 60s and 70s, but it's not quite the worst that it has to offer either. This is kind of a musical episode with a lot of songs in it, which some fans will enjoy and some fans probably will not enjoy quite as much. With a running time of just under an hour, though, it's a pretty good DVD, and I'm sure that kids and adults who love Peanuts will probably find much to like about this one. It is the remastered deluxe edition, which is a trend that Warner's been doing with their Peanuts releases recently, in which they've gone back and remastered the picture and sound quality. So this is the best that this particular special has ever looked. There's also one new extra feature called Animating a Charlie Brown Musical, which takes a look at the evolution of the Clark Gessner album on which the Broadway show is based to the Broadway show, to this animated special. So it's kind of a neat overview of how this particular animated special came into being. So if you're a Peanuts fan, you really do need to have the remastered version of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown on your shelf. If you're only a casual Peanuts fan, this isn't the greatest of the Peanuts specials, but it's certainly worth watching. Finally, we have Fraggle Rock, the animated series, a new 2-disc release from Lionsgate, which basically is an animated version of the Fraggle Rock TV show. Now, as I've stated in a previous review of Fraggle Rock, I've never been the biggest fan of Fraggle Rock in general. I never quite got the show, and it just wasn't something that I ever really grew up loving. So watching the animated series, I kind of had a similar reaction to it, although at least this one I can understand as being geared more for kids. Obviously, Fraggle Rock was geared for kids, but the animated version sort of works for me a little bit better. I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe it's just that I don't particularly love puppets in general, but the animated series is kind of a lot of fun. It has that neat sort of 80s Saturday morning cartoon vibe to it that I grew up watching. So even though I never watched this cartoon when it was on, I certainly kind of got a flashback to the way things were in the 80s. Not quite as much as I did watching the Transformers release, but I certainly did enjoy it more than I do the puppet version of the show. This is the entire series, includes 13 episodes, and Lionsgate has really done a nice job. They've included a handful of extra features as well, including a really nice documentary called The Making of Fraggle Rock, the animated series. There are some character galleries, there's the original opening sequence storyboard, and then of course you get some trailers. But for a fairly kind of, I don't want to say forgotten, but an obscure animated series that only lasted a part of a season, the fact that there are any extras at all for a show that's over 20 years old is a pretty nice bonus for fans of Fraggle Rock. So Lionsgate, well done with that one.